Test one, two, three, four. Good morning. Happy Saturday. Happy second week of May. Lots has happened this week. I got quite a bit to tell you, and it's going to be an exciting hour. I want to start this live stream off a little bit different. If you notice something a little bit different, I got my other glasses on. I call these my smart glasses. I noticed that with my pair that I usually wear, if it's a sunny, bright day like this, they'll shade, so they're the transition lenses, which are very helpful on days like today. But I noticed that I have the sunglasses on, so I went with these ones. These aren't transitions. I call them my smart glasses because I think they make me look a little bit smarter, which is good as a preface to this live stream because I had some problems this week, and I know in past videos I've talked about pests and maybe diseases a little bit, but as this season rolls along, we're going to be talking a lot more about it because I realized this week, as much as I like to think that I control my environment, ultimately I'm not in control. So with that, I wanted to introduce our special guest for this live stream, and that would be this guy right here. So as I found this guy in my shop where I have my seedlings, I thought we could name this guy like maybe Mike. I did not dispatch this mouse, but this is one of my number one problems with the plant nursery, especially when I get to this time of the year. Because as I'm going to show you later in this live stream, this guy right here could have been some of his brothers or sisters. I don't really know. But one of these guys, maybe Mike here, caused a lot of damage to my seedling tray. So it was partly my fault because I was in a hurry. As you probably know, I have a germination chamber for my warm seasons, so season seeds. So that'd be tomatoes, peppers. Most recently, I had sunflowers, melons, cucumbers, and squash. I think there's a couple other I'm missing, but basically the larger seeds, which is key to these guys, they were in the germination chamber. I was in a hurry. I checked them in the morning when I was making my rounds. They popped. So instead of thinking about what has happened in the past, I just pulled the tray out, slid it into underneath the grow lights in the heated shop out there, and just went about my business. The next morning when I came in, I realized that either this guy or somebody else had gotten into those trays. So it wasn't a total disaster, but it always reminds me that as much as I think I'm doing all the right things to prevent problems, if I make one mistake like that, then the mice or other pests remind me that uh, they're really they really have the upper hand here. Because and this is something that I wanted to ask you. Maybe you've thought about this, but mice or maybe it might be squirrels, raccoons when we're talking about chickens or just natural predators out there or pests or what we call pests, it's really nature, right? They have all day to plan. They're just doing their thing, so they want to survive and thrive just like we do, and they're looking for food. One of their food sources is seeds. I know this. They know this, but it just reminds me that I have to be aware of it. And maybe 5, 6 years ago, I would have been really, really distraught and upset. But I've had so much experience with having pests and diseases, and stuff's gonna happen. And I can guarantee even 10 years from now, when my skill set's even that much better than it is now, there's still gonna be problems because that's just how the way the world runs. And it's just a constant reminder that we're going to do the best job that we can to set our plants up for success. And like I said, it's not a total disaster with what happened with my seedling trays because we're early enough in the season. I also believe in redundancy, so that's probably the biggest thing I can speak to today is have redundant systems in place so you don't have a single point of failure. So with the seedling trays I'm going to show you here during the plant show, you'll see what mice damage looks like to the seedling tray. But with where we're at the second week of May, I'm going to be reseeding a couple more trays of sunflower seeds today, and then they'll be fine. So we got plenty of time. There's no crisis yet. And I can guarantee that those trays will not be going into the shop after they come out of the germination chamber. They're going to be going down into the basement where they're a little bit more secure. So that's the fun part of that. Now, what I have had my brother and some friends that have told me before, since we live out in the acreage, they use mice traps, or as far as the baits, it's basically poison. I have to date, I do not use any type of poison with mice. You could call me paranoid. I just have to be very cognizant of what I'm doing. So with Meg's Edible Landscapes, everything that I grow is edible, and I don't want to risk the chance. I've just called me hyper paranoid. It's just kind of how I'm hardwired. I don't want to take the risk of those mice possibly getting into something that's gonna designed to kill them, tracking them through my plants that we're ultimately going to be eating at different stages of the plant's life, and it's just a risk I don't want to take. So having said that, there are options, and maybe you haven't seen these before, so that's why I want to put my smart glasses on today so we can all learn together. But if you do have mice problems, I have used mouse traps, the cheap wood ones with the springs that you make into the mouse trap cars. Did that in Boy Scouts years ago. Those are okay, but since we live out in the acreage, the volume of mice that we have out here just I did that when we first moved out here, and I quickly moved on to this device. This works, this is like magical. It's a live trap for mice. So right here, there's a little ramp, as you can see. It's spring loaded. So right now I got peanut butter in there, and I can tell you after I found out that I lost some seeds, I went out and made sure I baited this. So the bait, which is peanut butter, that was all gone. I'm like, okay, this is probably why I'm having issues too. So I put some more peanut butter in there. With this being a live trap, the mice will come in up this ramp, and it's double-sided, so there's one on the other side too. It's about the size of a cigar box, and there's a clear cover on the top so I can see inside. Mice go up the ramp. Once they step off that little seesaw, it's spring-loaded, so the ramp comes back up and they're trapped inside. At which point, I don't check these every day. I usually, honestly, I haven't checked them in a couple of weeks. It's probably been closer to a month. So that's probably why I got into problems too, because I'm in nursery plant mode, keeping many plants alive, and it's okay. But I love these. I have these multiple of these around the shop, and they work well because I can. I have seen up to 4 or 5 mice in this trap at one time. So that's probably one of the best parts of this is that unlike the old spring type mouse traps, this one can catch the extended family at one time. So anyway, nice to see you, Shawnee. Mice can't get out in the traps I use. Okay, yeah. Do you have something very similar to that? Oh, that's the box you have. Yeah, absolutely. You have 10 of those. Yeah, they work very well. Kids like the clear windows. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So that was part of what I had going on this week. All the seeds that I just mentioned, so this was the big push for all the large summer plants. So once again, it's just the melons, the cucumbers, squash. They all germinated. Well, the ones that didn't get eaten by uh, that mouse there or his family. So those are all up, and really, there's not much more after this point as far as summer plants coming out. There will be more like succession planting, so I do multiple rounds of basil. I already have a round of basil. I actually have two trays of those. They're about this tall right now, so their true leaves haven't quite come on yet. But I'll do multiple successions of the basil. And the reason why is this year I brought on a new type of client, so that's what I wanted to share with you for this little part of the live show because I've talked about what I was doing, but I didn't tell you a whole lot of details. So at this point, I want to kind of slide, or I have some pictures I wanted to show you of what I'm doing with the memory care and assisted living, senior living communities, which I was this many days old this week when I realized this is what I want to do for a while because I did multiple program sessions this week with memory care and assisted living communities, and the amount of the energy, uh, some of these communities, I could find out within a minute of me showing up that the sense of humor was just off the chart. We were gonna have a great time because you just sense it when you walk in your room and you're like, man, these guys are jokesters, which those are my type of people. So, um, I mean, I switched the camera over. You could see a little bit what I do because I haven't really explained it. And that's why I wanted to share with you this week. So, okay. So this is a new type of program I started this year, and I came about this by accident, and I'm not sure if I shared that yet, but I wanted to share that with you. This was not my idea originally. I don't even know if my wildest dreams could have come up with this idea, but the very quick backstory is I went to a senior living community in Rochester, Minnesota, and this is typical for a lot of the senior living communities where they have independent living, and that could be like a condo, townhome, small apartment, and then they have assisted living, and then they have memory care or dementia care. So I'm not sure if you've ever had a loved one, maybe a grandma, great grandma, who's ever suffered from dementia. My great grandma, she suffered from Alzheimer's, and for the last couple of years of her life, she didn't know who I was, and that I was pretty young, so I think I was about 10 or 12. So that kind of stuck with me because unusual, it's such an unusual environment, and just the experience of that, I trying to process that and how that actually, or what causes that. So last couple of years of her life, she didn't know who I was. On a good day, she didn't know who my dad was, and it was always fun going to see great grandma because it was just interesting. It's like we met for the first time, but that kind of just sat in my brain. I kind of didn't think about it much until recently. So fast forward to recent times, I went down to one of these senior communities in Rochester, Minnesota, and I was pitching one of my edible gardens. So MEG's Edible Landscapes is known for doing seasonal pop-up container gardens, and that's what I built the business. You've seen the grow bags. I built a business around it and tried to pitch one of my gardens. Well, the problem was that community had a major renovation for their memory care and assisted living. So even though they had this great big open space patio, I was unable, we weren't able to access it because of the construction. And I was told by the wellness director that it was going to be off limits or under construction until the end of July. So I looked at her and I said, "Oh, well, I have nothing to sell you then." I feel kind of foolish because we're not even going to be able to set up a garden out here. Uh, but that's not the end of the story. That was the beginning of the story. Because at that point, she asked if I could do some type of program, which is what I wanted to share with you today. So this was all new to me a few months ago, but a lot of these communities have programming and they bring outside programmers. And I already knew that they brought in like musicians and artists because I was in band and we used to go to some of our local senior homes to perform for the residents. So I was already aware of that, but I didn't realize that they brought outside programming in. So what I did was I sat down with that wellness director and found out some more information about the programs that they typically run, and they do hire outside of the communities. So that means they bring programs that are run by individual or maybe a smaller business, and they cover all sorts of stuff. So like the Minnesota Zoo will come in and do, uh, I, they'll do interactive program sessions where they'll bring in animals, owls, like all sorts of types of animals from the zoo. So that's one example. But what this wellness director was asking me to do was something with the plants, like a edible garden program. So I talked to her, and then I called up a few other senior uh, communities, the wellness directors, activities directors, because I was trying to get information on how they structure their programming. And then through their guidance, I was able to put through together what you see on the screen here is a interactive gardening experience. And I could tell you after running the May program from this last week that it worked. It exceeded my expectations. I think it exceeded the wellness director and activity director's expectations. And I was so delighted after the first program this week that I could see from my perspective like how meaningful and deep connection I was able to make with the residents. And the coolest part was that a lot of these residents, they garden for decades. So I've been gardening for, well, I've been growing food for a couple decades now, seriously for the last 10 years. And I'm still learning stuff from these guys. So I typically start off these programs with asking about or trying to identify who my gardeners are because I every session that I've done, there's at least one. There's typically multiple former gardeners that have a lot of knowledge that I love to share with everybody else. And since it's primarily memory care that I'm dealing with, once they start to talk about their gardens, I usually see a visible change in their mood and their demeanor. And you see them lighten up because it's bringing back great positive memories from their past, which is why we're doing this program. So uh, this is kind of the sheet that I put together to explain to the wellness directors and activities directors that I've been dealing with, just the idea of how this program works. So this is the 30,000-foot view. And then for the month of May, we're doing a potting activity, which are called the Spring Awakening. And this is where every resident who's in this session will get to transplant, or what I do, I actually bring in a kit. So I'm bringing all the individual components. So those are quarter-gallon grow bags. I've shown those on camera before. And then the potting soil, and then the plants, of course. That's everybody's favorite part. And then I also bring popsicle sticks so we can write their names. If they'd like to name the plants or anything else, they can scribble on the popsicle sticks. And then all those seedlings are hardened off so they can go outside and they can live and thrive. Some of the residents decided that they want to keep them in the room in the window, and that's perfectly fine too. But this is the new niche. Like I said last week, it's a niche business within a niche business, and I'm super excited about this because this is what I'm going to be doing for the rest of this summer. And I also plan on doing some more this winter. And here's some pictures of the grow bags. So this week, some of the popular plants that were selected were cilantro and parsley. And in this one, you could see there's some lettuce. So I have baby butterhead lettuce. And as I've mentioned in the past, I typically select plants that are dwarf or miniature. So even those the baby butterhead lettuce that you see, the kind of bright green plants, those are only going to get to about 4.5 inches in diameter. So if that plant stays in that grow bag, it'll be perfectly fine for it. That raised planter bed that you see, that's brand new. It's from By the Yard. That's a local company in Minnesota that produces or manufactures that type of equipment. And it looks like it's wood, but it's not wood. It's composite material, which is fantastic. And that's something that I suggest to these communities if they're going to invest, because that's not going to rot like wood. It's not going to rot out. So I've seen a couple of communities where they've had the old cedar raised planters, and they tend to rot out after a while. But these composite, they look nice, and they're going to stick around for a bunch of years. So these guys just got this one, and I suggested if they wanted to put their plants outside, they could totally put them in this raised planter. And then I think later this week they're going to be getting their raised bed soil. I made some recommendations on that, and then they can transplant their seedlings into that, or they can, like I said, they can keep them in the room. So that's one picture. I got one more picture I think of here. There we go. So baby butterhead lettuce, cilantro, parsley were popular herbs this week. I also did edible flowers. So if you see in that photo, the kind of darker green leaves in between the lettuce, those are nasturtiums. They're babies, so they'll get plenty big. And then closest to the camera, you can see the cilantro and parsley. And then we also did violas and pansies. See, green stock might be good for senior living. Thank you for that recommendation. And then that's what that. And so this was another community. I found out after the session this week that you could see how shiny that concrete looks. So they had a similar experience to that Rochester community last year. So these guys just finished their outdoor remodel. So I was told that they did a similar activity this time last year, but they didn't have access to water, so they had miserable results. So I'm very thankful that their remodel is all finished, so they have access to water again this year. And then one of the residents is taking ownership of making sure these plants get watered. I left some tips and some handouts on the care and upkeep of these plants, so this is going to be exciting for these guys. In the background, towards to the left, you can see two more raised planters. That's for the assisted living part of the campus, and they same thing. And those, if we got, I didn't take any photos of those, but if we got really close, you'd see the same thing. So I worked with those guys in the morning. They did the same grow bag transplant activity, and then the one closest to the camera right now, that was the memory care of the same community. So it was one full day at this community, morning session with the assisted living, afternoon session with the memory care is a blast. It's a lot of fun. So that was what I did last week, and that's I wanted to share that with you because this was the first full week of the actual May planting activity. Up to this last week, I was doing demos, And I know I've shared my strawberry plants with you a couple times, but for the demos, it's usually a 15 to 20-minute demo just so the activity directors and wellness directors can see how I operate the programs. And then it's a kind of trial run to see if the residents even like me or like the plants that I'm bringing in. So with the strawberry plant demos, I bring a strawberry plant in that's already flowering, and my strawberry plants, I've showed them on camera a couple times when I was showing the perennial plants that are waking up. I actually pulled a couple strawberry plants out of the hibernation here a few months ago because right when I found out I was gonna be working with the senior communities, I pulled a couple strawberry plants out of storage, put them under grow lights, warmed them up. They came back to life, and then that gave me enough time to get them to start flowering when I needed them. So that's all to say is that even though if you've been gardening for years or decades, you kind of have a natural rhythm for the ebb and flow of the season and know when you need to start things and when they're gonna be ready to harvest. I also have a calendar that I use, but with what I do, I have to be very intentional on when I start things and I have to think about the end product. So for me, since I'm using plants as tools, and therapy value, I have to think about, okay, so April, I need strawberry plants that are flowering. When do I need to start those? So February, when I found out that I was going to be doing this, I was like, I need to pull strawberries out right now, get them warmed up. And the nice thing about when you start growing with intention, like with what I do, and I've talked about this in the past, you start to come up with where you start to develop skills on manipulating the growing environment. So I think I mentioned this a little bit last week, but I'll just talk about it briefly again, is that plants need a few different things to grow. They need sunlight, of course, for photosynthesis. They need water, and then they also need temperature. So for what I do, sometimes if I need to accelerate the plant growth or I need to push it a little bit harder, which I can tell you, I was pushing those strawberry plants at full tilt because I needed them, I needed to leaf out, get through a vegetative stage, wake up, and I need to get them flowers on them as soon as possible. So I had them at 75, 80 degrees. And then this is a small little grower tip too. So uh, we have minimum thresholds for temperatures for plant growth, and I've talked about this multiple times, but just as a refresher, cool season crops 40 degrees Fahrenheit, warm season crops 50 degree Fahrenheit. Below those, for those types of plants, they're not going to grow at all. They're just going to idle. But there is a limit on the high end, and that's something I want to mention too. So even if you have strawberries, which like warm temperatures, peppers, tomatoes, zucchini, whatnot, there is an upper limit, and that upper limit is typically about 85 degrees Fahrenheit. So just squirrel that number away in your head. 85 degrees Fahrenheit, that's usually the upper limit. When we start getting into the 90s or even the triple digits, you're gonna notice if you do see your garden plants, well, they're gonna give you a couple of feedback indications that they're getting hot. Above that temperature, they stop photosynthesizing. The plant usually goes into some type of protection mode. You might see the plant leaves start to curl because they're kind of shutting down. They're like, it's too hot. The environment's not conducive to us growing anymore, so we're going to start protecting ourselves. So if you ever see that, the plant's not, well, I'm not actually touching this point here in future live streams. So the plant's not, it's not damaged, it's not hurt, it's just protecting itself. So 85 degrees Fahrenheit, that's the number to think about today, that's the upper limit. So with the strawberry plants, back to what I was doing, I was running them in the 70s because I wanted to get them going so I could have something with flowers on it to do the hands-on pollination activity with these memory care communities. And it worked. I had plenty of flowers. I also went one step forward because I'm engineering this experience, and I intentionally did not hand pollinate some flowers on the strawberry plants. And if you haven't seen this before, or if you've ever seen a strawberry that was misshapen, it just looked goofy. It didn't look like the strawberry that you typically buy at the grocery store at the farmer's market. Just kind of lumpy, just kind of odd. what most likely happened is that it didn't fully pollinate, or there could have been some external environment problems too. But with what I'm doing with my program is I intentionally did not hand pollinate some of these flowers so I could show the value and the use and why we're hand pollinating these flowers. And I tie it all into nature because typically we don't even have to hand pollinate our strawberry plants because our friends, the bees, bumblebees, the other pollinators are doing that for us. But with what I'm doing with these memory care, I've designed a whole 15-20 minute demo session around it. So bring the strawberry plant in, I briefly talk about the strawberries, and then I hand out Q-tips, and then we start pretending we're bees and we're gonna hand pollinate a strawberry. At the same time, I can show them what the non-pollinated flowers or the flower or the fruits that failed to pollinate correctly, what those look like. Okay, okay. And then I typically have another strawberry plant that has, or on the same strawberry plant where that fruit it actually looks like what we recognize as a strawberry that we typically buy or we typically harvest. It's that full strawberry. And it's always exciting that I don't have the timing down perfect on this, but it's always exciting when I'm bringing those plants so we can see the before and then we see the actual red ripe strawberry that's ready to harvest. I've had maybe 5 or 6 of these demo sessions where I actually had a red strawberry. So that's always exciting because I do the reveal where I actually rotate the plant so they could see the red strawberry, and then that's the wow moment. um, but that's how I've been running the demo sessions. My strawberries are flowering, but no bees out yet. So yeah, they're just starting to wake up. We have 2 apple trees. I got one right behind me on my shoulder, and then we have another apple tree on the other side of the house. And last weekend, the flowers opened up on the apple trees, and I did see honeybees out there. So they're just starting to wake up. We're at the beginning of the season, so we should see some more honeybees here shortly. But for this week, here at the plant nursery, I told you the story with the mice getting into the warm season trays. But my peppers and my tomato plants, they have true leaves on them, and they're about ready to start getting hardened off. So I did a flip flop. The the melons, the zucchini, the cucumber seedling trays, those came into the basement, so they're protected from the mice. And then the tomatoes and peppers, they're going out to the shop. So the shop gets cooler at night. We I looked at the forecast. We're not supposed to have any more frost or freezing, but it doesn't matter because we could still the weather could change here in the next few days anyway. But this is when I start getting the tomatoes and peppers ready to get hardened off to go outside. So basically, I'm moving them to another part of the property where it's going to get cooler at night, so they can start getting used to that. And then probably the week after that, that's when I'm going to start transplanting the tomatoes and peppers into their grow bags. And then they're going to go out to the hoop house. And then from there, they're going to size up and then they're going to go out to the customers or to my programs with me on the road here later next month. So Shani says start hardening off on the 18th. Yep, yep, good. So I've talked enough. I think we should just get into start looking at plants. And I brought my seedling tray up here so you can see what the mice did to it. It's not the end of the world. I've seen much worse damage, but it's just like I said, it's a reminder of who's ultimately in control, and it's not this guy. So these plants that I have right here, you're seeing some of the plants that I use for these programs. I brought some edible flowers up here. You can see my mouse right here too. I brought some edible flowers and some herbs. Here's some dill. And I'm experimenting with different size seedling pouches. And I wasn't sure about these size seedling pouches for these memory care sessions, but these worked very, very well. They're easy to manage. They work really well, so I've been really impressed. I have some bigger seedling bags too. What I did this week is these larger ones like the dill. This is parsley, dill, and then I have pansies and then Johnny jump up violas. What I did was everybody got the smaller seedling pouches for their individual grow bags, and then for the larger ones that are already, these are kind of like a example of what the smaller plants are gonna grow into. I asked for a couple of volunteers to babysit these plants. This was more for the assisted living, um, but I asked for some volunteers to babysit these until they could transplant them into their grow bed, and then the smaller ones were the ones that went into the quarter gallon grow bags for the activities. And then now to the seedling tray. I'm unveiling this right here, but if you ever see, and I knew immediately when I saw this tray that what happened. So if you ever see something like this, so right here, you see how the cotyledon leaves are up. These all look normal, but this right here doesn't look right because we got a stem and we're missing the cotyledon leaves. And then if you look here, I got roots that are up out of the soil. So like this poor guy right here, this is one of the first ones I saw, and that was a dead giveaway that I had an unwelcome guest who decided he or she was hungry. Right here too, you see the seed. So you got the plant right here. The seed's like off to the side. Usually the seed should be somewhere close to the leaves when they're coming up out of the soil. So then over here with my bigger zucchini plants, you see like right here, they just decided to chomp down on the whole seed. It's just, I've been down this road before, so like I said, in years past I would have been really upset, but it's not the end of the world because I still have plenty of plants that they didn't touch. And if you also notice, and this is why I start my larger seeds like sugar snap peas and beans indoors, because I've noticed once it gets to this stage, the mouse is going to leave it alone. They really want to eat that seed before it gets to like this stage right here. But that's what that looks like. So I still have plenty of seedlings on there that are doing just fine. I'm going to replant or reseed the the sunflowers, and then we're gonna continue to go on with the growing season. So, but this was a learning week for me in multiple ways, and life goes on. But we have plenty of other plants that are doing just fine, and yeah, it's beautiful weather as you can see behind me. I think we're gonna be mid 60s to get mid 60s again today. Lots of sunshine, some clouds, but it's spring, so it's a great time of the year. Anyway, it's great spending time with you this morning. Enjoy the weather if it's sunny in your area, and look forward to going with you this summer. So have a great week.